everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Great Debate, Website Best Practices for Online Degrees. I'm Becky Morehouse, Senior Vice President at StayMates, and I'm so glad you could join us. Today's presentation will last 60 minutes. Please feel free to submit questions at any time by typing into the Q&A box. If we are unable to address all questions during the presentation, one of us will follow up with you via email within the next few days. If you experience any technical issues, please send a message in the Q&A box as well, or call us at 800-553-8878. A copy of the presentation deck, as well as the on-demand recording, will be available after the webinar. I also want to bring to your attention our next webinar later this month that may also be of interest to you. On June 30th at 12:30 Central, Mariah Obodetsky will be presenting how a call to action strategy can improve your marketing ROI. Learn more and register for this webinar on our website at www.staymates.com/webinars. We hope you can join us. Now I'm going to let our presenters introduce themselves. First up is Sandra.
Hi, my name is Sandra Fancher, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at StayMates. And I've been working in digital for over 20 years, and I have a passion for optimizing the overall user experience. So I'm very excited to talk about kind of this challenge of online programs versus traditional programs today.
And now it's your turn, Joan.
I'm jumping the gun. I didn't even get you to let you introduce me. I'm Joan Benson, AVP for Digital and Creative Strategy at StayMates. I've been at StayMates for 10 years and working in higher ed in one way or another for over 30 years because I'm old. And I'm all about the content. That's where the magic has to happen. To connect your audience with your goals, it has to happen in the content. Everything else is about getting people to the content. So.
Great.
And we're as distanced as we can be in this conference room.
You're doing great.
So.
All right, and just quickly, just a little bit about StayMates before we'll let the ladies get started. Over the past 60 plus years actually, StayMates has been dedicated to supporting the higher ed industry by helping colleges and universities with their marketing and communication needs. We have a nationwide clientele representing every type of higher education institution, and strategy really is, we believe, is our strength, and it's informed by a strong body of research about your offerings and your services. So now I'll let them get started.
All right, thanks, Becky. So just some starting assumptions for our recommendations for today to kind of set the tone. First, our assumption is that Google is your homepage. Every prospect's journey kind of begins, with a Google search, with that kind of question or intent. So we're going into this presentation today with that assumption. Our second assumption is that online degree programs really compete fiercely against each other. It's not the same type of playing field as traditional, and you need solid, dedicated content to sell your program over the competition. So there's a lot of different ways to present online programs, but we're just going in with this assumption that you need dedicated content. Assumption 3 is that online prospects have different priorities. So those who are actively looking for an online program is going to have a different set of priorities than those who are looking for an on-campus experience, and that your content needs to speak to that. And then finally, our last assumption is that on-campus programs will return. So we know that this is an era right now where everything is online, but we are treating this as how do we get set up for whether it's the fall or the spring programs that will be on campus. So those are our 4 assumptions, and we'll go ahead and get started.
All content strategy begins with getting a clear focus on your audience. For our discussion today, we developed 3 personas for MBA programs. And personas are a great tool. If you don't use them already, I would recommend them so that they really help you understand your audience's needs in a more well-rounded way. Now, our case study today is all about MBA programs, but that doesn't mean that what we have to say is only about MBA programs. It really, these personas and most of what we say about can adapt to any audience. These personas in particular can adapt to any adult student audience, and to many traditional audiences, because the category is beginning to blur into the other one. So
they say you need to speak up a little, Joan.
all right, I will speak up a little bit. I will sit forward and speak up. We tried to get more separation, maybe that added to it. So whatever your student's educational goal is, you can use the principles that we talk about in this webinar today for them. So let me introduce you to Doug. He knows he wants to go online. He's only interested in online. He's a quiet guy, he's independent, he can work on his own, he's comfortable doing that, and he needs the flexibility. He has already decided a modality preference. And this is Elena. She's on the other end. She would rather meet people and be on campus, and she hopes that comes back soon because she wants to expand her professional network, and she knows she learns better in that environment. And then we have Michael, who really could go online. He's comfortable that way, but on campus, he's getting a little tired of everything on screens. He could see that being a good way to earn his degree as well, his MBA. So we're going to use those personas in a moment to look at content in a little more focused way. But another thing that you need to understand about online programs is that they are not geographically neutral. A lot of our clients talk about online as if they have a nationwide audience. While you can serve, you can recruit and serve students anywhere, regardless of location, depending on the rules. I know there are lots of different rules about it, but theoretically you could deliver the content anywhere. Still, your users, your audience, your prospects have a geographic preference, and it's growing. Imagine this prospect who has looked at 3 different programs and ranked them 1, 2, 3. This is my favorite program. This is my least favorite program. They're still all in their consideration set. But what will make the difference is the distance. University 3 is the closest. So University 3 and 2 are really going to be in this prospect's consideration set, even if they're looking at 100% online, never going on campus. They want a sense of identity. They want to know the university that's offering that or the institution that's offering that. This is research from Learning House, but it is that within 50 miles, 67% of the students surveyed in 2019 want a university within 50 miles. And actually 44% want it within 25 miles. So there's a strong geographic preference. It doesn't mean there's still a third of the students out there who don't have that tight circle around themselves. So you can compete for those students, but 2/3 want one basically in their backyard. So that means you need to pay most attention to the competitors who are near you. And this depends a little on your region. Where are you? How many competitors for your programs are within those 25 or 50 miles? Should you worry about the national big brand programs? Maybe. They might be in a better position to reach that third of the students who are less geographically preferred than the ones who are 100 miles away.
But they're also spending up to, $1 million a month in ad spend.
Right. That's
so
how they
it's
build the brand.
very expensive to go against the national big brands.
Right.
So in our experience working with higher ed, we see 3 common traps to some of the recommendations we're actually going to give today. The first one is the online program is disconnected from the on-campus program. And that could be because you've outsourced your online program. So we have clients that they partner with someone else, and so they might have their own website or different content, or it could be a different department or business unit that manages the online program. And so you have these 2 different groups working on that together. So that might be one reason the content on the website is disconnected. The second common trap is that the schools will make one program page for both online and on campus. And there'll be a paragraph that will say, for enrollment for on campus, for enrollment online, fees for one, fees for the other. A lot of times we see this as really just a resource issue. So they have the program, they add it online, they just kind of edit that content in there. So that's the second common trap that we see. And the third common trap is featuring on campus over online. And usually the reason we hear is that we don't want to take away students from on campus that we would have to go to online. Online needs to be new students, enrollment growth, not just transitioning our on campus. We need them to come here. We need them in our housing. We need them to eat in our dining. And so we don't really want to push online too much because it could impact us over here. So we'll use these three common traps and come back to them at the end of what our recommendations are for each of them.
So if you find yourself in one of these traps, don't despair. We have some suggestions for you. So let's think about the personas and the content. When we say that the search engine results page or SERP is your home page, we mean that's the first bit of content from you that they're going to see. Your meta description tag or whatever shows up of your advertising. That's the first impression that they have if they don't know you already. So if you don't have control over your meta description, you want to get control of it and you want to make it a really strong meta description. So imagine Doug, who knows he wants online. He searches for online MBA programs near Cedar Rapids. He probably would say near me, but I put in our location so you understand why we're getting Drake and University of Iowa and these, because that's where we're located. And we get a lot of ads. This is a competitive space. We know that. But you see, if you look at this through his eyes, yeah, these are mostly appropriate responses to his search. The University of Iowa one actually is an interesting one. It is only about on-campus programs being delivered online. That might make him less interested in that program, even though the next entry down, as you get down, you will see the online Iowa option available on the SERP. But this looks like a pretty good set of results for Doug. When Elena searches for in-person MBA programs, she gets a lot of online results. That might not be the best experience for her, but she's going to sort through that.
We also know from our programs that most online programs will advertise around your traditional searches because they are trying to capture those people. So just because they search for on campus, that's definitely still a trigger for online campaigns.
And Michael, who is, he doesn't care. Online, on campus, he doesn't care. He asks for the real MBA program. He might ask for the best MBA program. We know those results are going to be a little bit odd if he asks for that. So I put real. He wants a strong one. And he gets different results than the other two as well. This might also be a search that the other personas would look at. So what do you think Doug would see if he entered real MBA programs? How would he look at these results? How does your homepage, your SERP, compare for your different personas? You can see this one actually also includes the map and places things around the individual. So then your user moves from the SERP to your content. That's the goal. That's the job of your meta description, is to move them from the SERP and into your content. Some of our examples are from sites we just found. Some of them are from sites that we have had a hand in. This is one of the sites that we have helped with the content strategy, UT Permian Basin. And this one presents first a modality neutral program overview page. And it's going to scroll, I think, pretty smoothly. Some of the scrolls work well in PowerPoint, some not so much. So you can see they present all the general information about application deadline, grades, admission process, and at the bottom present a menu of modality and variations of the degree choices that you can then choose to follow, the user can follow the next way. So the question is, how would each of these personas respond to this? What do you think? Is this going to be appropriate content for Doug? He's looking for online. Elena, who wants on campus, and Michael, who hasn't decided a preference one way or the other. I think this works pretty well for any of the personas. That's my perception looking at it. Because it's not, oh, I've been reading all of this and then I realize online isn't entirely, has different rules about admission or different rules about grades.
And if you visit UTPB site, you'll see that they have a page for Masters of Business Administration on campus and a page for online and then a parent page. So there's really the 3 individual pages depending on which door you came in. The online group might go directly to the online page.
Right. A search might direct you to specifically the online page. But if you come in through the university's navigation, you'll come first to this modality neutral overview page. So some of the questions that we're talking about have to do with navigation rather than content presenting as well. Looking at another option, which actually you choose the modality and then there's online specific content. There's some general content here as well. This is from the University of Iowa, not a site that we were involved with, but if this is the online specific content, and I think Doug would find this very helpful. It's much about the program, very little about the modality, but some of it. So it's really directed towards someone who has a preference for online. If Elena comes to this content first, she might just keep moving on for the on-campus, or some of these headlines might capture her and might make her consider online as an option. And Michael will probably find some information here to inform his choice about modality. So it's good content for all the personas. If you go to on-campus specific, I think you'll see the same thing with the personas. Whether or not this was their first choice, they will get some information that's helpful or make them consider a different modality, but it won't confuse them. I think those pages where they put everything on one page, it can be confusing. Am I looking at the online or on campus? This is all very clearly on-campus specific information.
Also, having 2 separate pages, and we're going to talk about this, is optimized for search.
Yes.
So that if they type in online program, Google knows where to send them.
Right. They go exactly to that page and they see the content that they were seeking, which is always a positive experience when you're searching online. You also need to think about these personas not just on their first visit to your site, but throughout their journey. They will probably visit several times. Mostly we've been considering that first arrival on the page, but what if they come back and they look at the modality they prefer and then they look into the other one? Does your content help them at that moment? If they come back to your page because they're ready to apply, does the content help them and keep them moving forward? So let's think a little bit more about how that modality preference shapes content. On the next slide, we're going to look at 2 programs from the same institution, one on campus and one online. It's not an MBA because the things that we're talking about apply to more than MBA programs.
So we really like this example from Maryville. We picked cybersecurity. It is one of the trending programs right now. The one on the left is under their traditional programs on campus. And you will see that that yellow, kind of orangey yellow call to action in the banner is visit campus, because that is a key call to action. The gray strips are different messages because, again, the selling points are different. The one on the right is if you come in through their online programs, it's almost like a campaign landing page with that take the next step up at the top. It's got that strong sales pitch. There's a future for you in cybersecurity. They have their different 100% online. You can see all of the different key calls to action. They have a why choose. We know from analytics that people who are looking for online, they're going to bounce. They're going to hit those, and you got to capture them very quickly and answer those questions because they're just doing that shopping and doing more shopping comparison. You don't get the chance to get them to come on campus usually and have that deeper conversation. So the one on the left is perfectly designed for that persona, and the one on the right is great for the online persona who is looking for specifically online courses. But one of the neat things on this is if we scroll down, again, you'll see different stories, different successes. If I am on the on-campus one, which
It rewound to the back. So.
at the bottom, it links over to the online. So that's one of our key recommendations is if you have 2 pages, you need to make that connection right there. It says online.
I didn't know you were going to talk about
No, that's
that.
right, online campus link. So if I come in the door and I haven't decided, I'm the persona who I haven't really decided which one that I want, and I'm on the on-campus, you should link me to the online. This is where a lot of times schools don't want to do that because they don't want to take away from that on-campus. But we know that students come in the wrong door sometimes, and we do still need to meet their needs, and that in the end will increase our overall enrollment. So 2 different pages, 2 different stories, 2 different calls to action, visit campus or take the next step by filling out the form, but yet linking the 2 together to make that strong connection.
One last look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So really, how do you decide how you present it? Whether you present it side by side like that in a sort of group together, where you go through a generic overview page and then you divide by modality. Some of it may depend on how you define your program. Some of it may depend on how other people define your program. But the core of what we're trying to do in content strategy is to take a known audience segment and make sure they meet the right content at the right point in their journey. That's how we reach our goals. Mm-hmm. And so as you think about defining your program and matching the content to the audience, you need to think about how alike and how different your online and on-campus programs. Is it the same program, just delivered different ways? Are there differences in the process, like admission deadlines or costs? Does the curriculum, student support, that's really important for online students. Does student support differ between the 2 delivery models? Is the cohort significantly different? When we look at MBA programs, the online cohort versus on-campus cohort can be very different in terms of age and their experience in the industry. So you need to think about those things. We actually have a simple navigation decision tree. It's really just 2 questions, so you can decide which way you want to organize your content. The first question is simply, are our programs the same? If the answer is yes, then we would recommend the modality neutral overview page, the example we showed from UTPB. And then you can break out modalities 1 and 2 and cover the other topics and child pages as you need to do that. If you say our programs really are not the same, then we'll ask a clarifying question. Are they the same except for processes? Cost, schedules, admissions, some of those things work differently for online versus on campus. If it's just the processes that are different, you can use that modality overview page and go through that. You may need to beef up the other topics pages so that you can detail all of those differences and people are not confused, but you can use that model. It's very easy to navigate. If, on the other hand, they're really quite different, then you are going to want to keep them separate and really have the primary page about the program based on modality. Modality 1, and then you go through all the other topics. Modality 2 and all the other topics like admissions and processes and all of those will fall under that. It's a pretty simple way to decide how you want to organize your content.
It does mean a commitment to content on the one on the right because you have to write admissions 2 times.
Yes.
You have to write costs 2 times, but you're optimizing the experience for the user and allowing that content to live within their journey, not having to jump out to find it.
And you can go directly from the SERP to that modality page, and it is a full-fledged program page. It's not a sub-page.
So once you've decided kind of which structure you should have, you need to make sure that other touch points within your website support those journeys. And one of the key ones is program finders. And there's still a lot of sites out there that do not have full finders yet, but that is definitely a key trend of actually having searches. So if you have an actual program finder search, you would want to have an online category. You would want to have, whether it's online dual or online only or the delivery method, but some way to search and filter by the online program. If you do not have a dynamic finder search, which there's still several out there, you just want to make sure that you can browse to online only. It's not as convenient, but you should be able to go by online or by the type of program. Then it's really important, so on the right where we have Business Administration MBA, you show, maybe it's with an icon or not, the on-campus and the online. Those should again be two different pages because they each have their own message. They should be listed in your program finder as two things, and they should have the same title if they're the same program, but then dash on campus or dash online following it. Sometimes we'll see inconsistencies, parentheses online or online before the name would be online business administration, but the online across all the different programs are not labeled the same. So we want that consistency in our label name on our program finders.
And that's not just within your division of the institution, but across the institution, it should be labeled the same.
So then getting into how we label the HTML page title. So the HTML page title is what shows up in the top browser, but it's actually really important because it ripples through to Google. So going back to UTPB, we have a great example. So here it's online master's degree in accounting. And the on-campus one is just accounting master's degree program. So having that kind of accounting in that same spot would be ideal. But then if we go to what our recommendation is, online words should be first, the program name should be second, the school name should be third. That's how you should label your HTML page title. That does not mean your H1. That does not mean the label on the program finder that I just showed. This is your HTML page title. And the reason we want this order is that when we it shows up in Google. So if we go to our next one, it will say online, MBA accounting, and then the school name. We believe from our research that having the word online first in Google is more important because they might be looking for that word. And then instead of way at the end, especially if you have a long program name, but putting that online first. So this heading in Google is driven from your HTML page titles. So that's where kind of optimizing for search is important. The second thing is in January of this year, Google made a change to the featured snippet. So the featured snippet, you can see here for UTPB, they won online master's degree in accounting. But my search was around their name. In January, Google now counts that as slot 1. Before January, you would win the featured snippet and then you would win down below in the organic listings. Now, if you are in the featured snippet, you do not show down below. There are pros and cons to being in the featured snippet versus not. Sometimes people will skip over that and go straight to the results. And sometimes if you're winning in the other programs and your programs are connected, then go for the featured snippet. If you don't want to have that in the featured snippet, you can actually tweak all of these things in your robots file. But again, searching, understanding how you're showing up in search for your online programs is really important, and why we recommend tweaking that HTML page title. So back to our common trap recommendations, because you might say, yes, this is great. You have 2 pages, recommendations, 2 totally different templates, but I can't get past that. So if your first trap was, online disconnected from the on-campus program, whether it was because you've outsourced it or a different business unit manages it, our first recommendation is that you still cross-link the two. Our second recommendation is that you need to include all in Program Finder. So we see this, you'll have all the traditional programs, but if you can, optimize that page for your search and put them in there. And if not, at least put a big link for the online programs and possibly even list those programs, even if they live in two separate pieces. The second common trap of one program page for both, again, it comes down to resources, but we recommend that you use that decision tree and then prioritize the programs that, one, have capacity, and two, have the highest competition in 50-mile radius, to really start to break those two pages apart so that you can earn Google rankings for the online, and you can give that very specific sales pitch. So you might, if your classes are full, you might not focus on those right away, but focus on the ones that have capacity that you need to increase enrollment. And the third is, sometimes along the politics of we don't want to impact our traditional enrollment to grow online, but actually, it's kind of, it is where we are. Online enrollment is going to grow, especially next year, and we cannot hold back online to hope that it doesn't impact traditional. We have to let each do that. So the first thing is set clear KPIs for each program. What does success mean? And hopefully success means it's not stealing from one or the other, but they each have their own value statements. Then there really needs to be stakeholder engagement in this plan, because sometimes there is that concern of, impacting traditional. So get them engaged, talk to them about this. How do we grow online without impacting traditional? And then go back to the blue box, the middle one, and follow that decision tree, prioritize those, and write that content. But don't allow these three common traps to not take a step. At least, taking a step of one of these to connect that should impact overall enrollment. So just a few reminders as we wrap up today. The first one is you need to consider the audience first. If they are primarily interested in online, talking to them about the on-campus experience is not going to help them. If they're primarily interested in online, again, you need to provide that supporting content. What support are you going to give me from student services? What are my costs? What's the experience? And if they're 18-year-old wanting to come on campus, they don't need that other information, so don't clutter it up. So again, think about the audience.
And because the on-campus are going to be much more interested, the traditional on-campus, they're interested in what the campus experience is like. They're interested some in outcomes, but that's a little vaguer for them. Clubs, what are my dining options? What do the dorms look like? They are going to be asking those questions first. They do ask questions about cost. They do ask those other questions, but they come later in their journey. Yeah.
So treat it like you are having a personal conversation, and they said, "Yeah, I'm interested in online." You wouldn't go immediately talking about the dorms. So
right, and we know that especially for adult students, they choose their modality. They have a preference usually earlier. So so you know what you're doing in talking to adults, and they care about flexibility and costs. So.
And second, you really need to treat online and on campus as two programs. There is always, it is about choices, and if they are the exact same program, but most people have different needs for each one. And unless you're using a very strong personalization program on your content management system, then you could maybe get away with a program page as one that dynamically turns content on and off. But otherwise, you really should treat those as two programs that will optimize your SCM. And
it'll help with search.
Oh, sorry, search, yes. And our third is to evaluate all journey touch points and adjust that content. So the program finder, the cost page, the services page, all of those things that really are the entire journey. So based on our research, students come back sometimes 22 visits back. They don't always take the same journey. They take multiple journeys, but they're looking at that supporting content. So making those links together is really important. And then just a few helpful tips. Joan and I wrote a blog article. This will be posted in the notes. And then of course this webinar will be on demand. So I'll just pull up our questions, see if we have any questions on the site right now. Let's see. Hold on, let me just flip over to our chats. Okay. We have a question. We've talked a lot about online. What if our program name is not called online? Which we see that too.
Distance learning, or sometimes more bizarre
Yes.
terms that seemed clever at the time.
So what do you do if your program isn't called online? Well, first off, most people still search for the term online. We have this exact same issue when there's a school branded, maybe somebody made a large donation and now the school is branded that name. Most people who are searching for that program might not necessarily know it's that brand.
Right, the blank school of business.
The blank school, yes.
Yeah.
So always start with your HTML page title if you can, in your meta description, in your first paragraph, possibly your headline, putting in the more common terms. You want to be found for what people are searching for. And then you can put the branding. The branding is still important, but that is for people once they've found you. So I would still encourage the words online program, even if that's not what you name it, and then put your branding in farther down on the page.
Right. And think about all the ways they might, we talk about online versus on campus, but on campus, I'm not sure that's the way most prospective students would label it. We had Elena in the persona put in person. So there are lots of ways that, because that is, they will think about the part of the experience that matters to them.
And even like traditional student, I don't think they think that. Joan and I just did a strategy for adult classes. Well, we know from our focus groups that 18-year-olds think that they are adults. Yeah. So using the label adult is also kind of a gotcha, and maybe not something to use.
Even if that's your division. That's
even that's what it's called. Right. They don't like to not be called an adult. They're 18 or 18. So that is definitely a kind of internal term. What if my online program has age restrictions?
We have seen that. We have seen that.
I think being clear up front. So say, you know, for ages a certain thing, but then if I came to that page and I didn't meet that age requirement, what options do you have for me? So I think it's not just saying what you do have for 24 plus, if that's what your online program is, but what to do without. I also think now with COVID that those things are going to go away. Yeah. It used to be, and again, I think that was for trap number 3, was we're not going to allow them to do online.
Right. We don't want our traditional students to do online.
To take away. Yeah. So I think that will go away. But even if you do have that age restriction, let's say 24 plus for online, just make sure you have a path for the person that's not. Any other advice on that one?
Well, again, cross links or personalized content so that you can always feed related programs or other things they've looked at. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and then challenge the age requirements.
Yeah. So. Talk to stakeholders, see whether that rule really makes sense anymore. Any other questions?
I think that's it for our questions that came in. Unless STAMATES team, I missed anything on the other end. All right. So you can reach out to Joan and I on Twitter. You can find us on LinkedIn. We can get the page up. There it is.
We can.
There we go. We'd love to talk about this, or if you have any questions or want advice on your online program page or your regular program page. and even what is a program? That's one of the
Yeah.
workshops that we spend a lot of time on as well.
What counts as a program? Is it all about degrees?
Mhm.
Is it about disciplines?
All right, well, we thank you for your time and hope you can join the next webinar at CMAIDS. Thank you.